2, 3, 4.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Power of Music Thinking. My name is Christoph Zürn, and this is the podcast for people with a musical heart and a wicked job. We're looking for stories, insights and tools from the big world of music to inspire leaders and followers to listen, tune, play and perform in whatever field you're operating. Today we're in Albany, Ohio. We speak with Paula White, a globally recognized sales leader, leadership coach, and author of the book Side B, Remix Your Leadership Style. We talk about how music can recharge the way you are leading and how leaders can work on their behavioral traits based on musical principles. Paula shares with us the 10 archetypal instruments that are based on a scientific survey, and Paula explains one of them, the saxophone type, that came out of the survey I did before the conversation. All right, let's get into it. Hello, Paula. Nice to have you on the Power of Music Thinking.
Hello, Christoph. I am so honored and I love talking to you. So couldn't be happier to be here.
Thank you very much. And as you're at the moment, you're in the car, so there might be some different noise. So fantastic. And thank you for not driving.
Yes, no, not driving. Very, very much safe. Took off the seatbelt, turned off the car. I'm good.
Perfect. Paula, let me start with a personal question that I ask all of my guests in the beginning. What was your first memorable sonic experience or album or concert that had an impact on you?
Oh, well, there's been several, but I would say it would be Billy Joel, The Stranger. When I was in middle school, I wrote a whole play off of that album with Rosalita and the Italian restaurant and Brenda and Eddie. I had a whole play off of that whole album, and I absolutely loved it. I would listen to it daily when I'd get home from school.
Wow, cool. So talking about the album.
Yeah.
Right. Nice,
Yeah.
Very nice. So, Paula, who are you and what do you do for a living?
I am just me, and I love music and I love people, and I started my own business using music to help develop emerging and high potential leaders. So that's what I do now, is really go in looking at their personal traits and behaviors and interests and helping them apply that to their leadership style, and then combining it with a music playlist or something along those lines,
Cool. So there are many questions, so we will dive into a little bit more into it a little bit later. But what was your career? So you worked in sales, or can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I worked in inside sales for over 30 years. I started as a travel agent, and that's where I got my ability to really dream and ask questions of people coming in of what kind of vacation they wanted. And then I went into veterinary distribution and into healthcare distribution, and kind of grew the corporate ladder with everything that was going on. Took a team from 4 people to 32 people. And, we grew the company. We grew our department 47 million in about 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. But I will tell you, sales is it's quite demanding. And the older I got, the more I found my music was being turned off. And that's what we'll talk about later.
All right. Yeah, the music turned off. That's an interesting one. So, how can the music be turned off? Do you mean this metaphorically, or is there something? Because, as far as I understand, sales always has to do with people. So you always interact with people, and to better understand people, music sometimes can help you to say, "Oh, that's that kind of person."
And that is exactly what I'm teaching now. But as I was growing and climbing the corporate ladder, with every promotion, that music switched from people to data, right? And you really start looking at data analytics. Are you making your goals? Are you achieving your revenue? Are you doing X to get to Y? And it wasn't until the music really got turned back on for me when I lost a whole team because I wasn't there for them. That I noticed that I wasn't really serving the people that I needed to serve for a while. And then I changed my style, and that's when we took off and grew.
How did you find out? Was this a special moment where you realized that?
It was during a conference, and Dwayne Cummings was the keynote speaker. And he literally said, flip the org chart. And I didn't understand quite what that meant. And so on
what
the
does
plane,
it mean?
I was like, wait, I don't get that. And so on the plane, I wrote out the org chart and I flipped it, literally. And I went, oh, I work for my people. I don't work for my boss.
That's nice. That's very nice.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so now you have your own business, and it's called B-Side. The company name is B-Side, right?
The company name is actually Side B.
Oh.
And as we talked about this, it's Side B because I really wanted to go back into musical history where those little 45s, that in 1942, I believe, RCA put out the 45 with a single on one side and another single on the other side. The single was called Side A, and alternately, the other side was Side B. It wasn't until those 45s started really getting popular with DJs and people buying them that they flipped it over to Side B. So instead of saying Side A, Side B, it was naturally the lingo became the B side. Yeah.
Cool. And the B-side sometimes is there were also interesting songs, but the
my
A-side
goodness.
was the major player.
Well, the A side was the popular song. It was supposed to be the one that was to hit the charts running. And usually side B was just put there last minute or was, something that was typically going to be unpublished, right? But then you have side B songs like Maggie May from Rod Stewart or even Wipeout from the Safaris. You have Hound Dog by Elvis Presley. Green Day's most famous side B is their song that is, I can't think of the name of it right now. I'll have to get back to you on that one. But there are so many more popular side Bs than side A. As a matter of fact, Kiss, and I'm sure you know this, Kiss was a heavy metal rock band here in the States, and they were really known for heavy metal, the black leather, the boots, the face painting, the long hair.
The tongue.
The tongue. Their most popular song was written by Peter Criss, who wrote it about his wife, and it was Beth. It was a piano ballad.
Oh.
And it is the only one that got significant airplay from Kiss's whole album repertoire.
And what's the name of the song?
Beth.
A Beth. Oh, all right. So
Hmm.
I just thought it was I Was Made for Loving You because this might be their biggest hit. I don't know. I'm not too much into Kiss.
Yeah, no, Beth. If you look at
All
their
right.
most significant airplay, it was Beth, a piano ballad.
So how do you mean B-side, or how are you using B-side? Is B-side, let's say, the hidden side or not the obvious side, or let's say the lower part of the iceberg? Is this what you think of when you talk about it?
Yeah, so think of it this way: the A side, the popular song, all of those things. I look at those as your resume building skills. Those are all the skills you want everyone to buy into. That is, your budgeting, your negotiating skills, all of those skills that you've learned in school. Where if you go to the B side, I'm looking at positive behavioral traits that are naturally within you, whether it's curiosity or courage, because we have to have those positive behavioral traits that really affect people. It's the humanity side, those softer skills that are relational based skills.
And direct your business to leaders, and do they know their B-side?
Some of them think they do, and they will say, they'll I have 10 archetypes that we talked about. They'll say, oh, I'm the drummer, or I'm the saxophonist, I'm kind, I'm gracious. But until we give them an opportunity to take a survey, we really find out what their interests, preferences, and traits are. And we've assigned a different, desirable traits, essential traits to different positive behaviors. That once they uncover that, it's like taking a blanket off your head. Now you know what's inside of you, and you can really develop that skill set.
And as you just mentioned, there are 10 archetypal types, and you connected them to musical instruments.
I did. So, let's take the drums, for example. The drums, if you think of the drums, the drum is what part of the band? The band to keep tempo, to keep the song going, to keep the beat, to move it forward, right? So your side A is you're a forward thinker. You are somebody who's going to take the company to the next level. But what's side B? To have those kind of skill sets, you've got to be curious, right? Open. So the B side, or side B, is curiosity. So if you're a forward thinker and you're a drummer, then your side B is curious, because some of the desirable traits are open and reflective and experimenting and self-improvement and really encouraging and asking a lot of questions.
All right, all right, interesting. So then we have one. Do you want to name them all? So
Well,
there
we
are 10.
can.
Yeah,
We
I would
can.
like to, because it's interesting to understand that you're using this in your consultancy on with leaders. And sometimes I can imagine that some leaders might have a preference for a certain instrument coming from
Right.
some kind of history. And what you do is, let's say, the reverse engineering. You just give them a very a big survey, and
Yeah.
with a lot of psychology or intelligence, one of these archetypes is, let's say, dominant, and then you get into a talk with them.
That's exactly true. So we talk about dominance because eventually you want to be the full band, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
you've got the drummer, you've got the lead guitarist, which, if you look at the lead guitarist, they are really, and I keep my stuff here so I can my notes here with me. So they are really passionate, and they are really the ones that look at a need for results and accountability. but they're overly passionate about it sometimes. So to balance that, that's what we look to balance that, because you have to take initiative and be enthusiastic to be the lead guitarist. Now, think of the lead guitarist in a real band. What are they? They're out there doing the riffs and you know, really loving what they're doing with the ups and downs. They're fantastic. We have the bass guitarist, which is an exceptional communicator, and they are. I put their side B as ethical, right? We have sincerity, which is the piano. And think of the piano. You use both sets of white and black keys for harmony and for all of those things. And the piano can be really driven in many ways. It can be the lead. It can be an accompany. It can, you know, you look it up. We just talked about the Elton John concert. He is all piano. And he is so sincere in everything. But their traits are, you know, they want authority. And that is the decision-making process while accepting the decision-making responsibility. And that's really the piano. Trustworthy, the rhythm guitarist, because we always trust that the rhythm guitarist is going to be there when they are accompanying the drums. They're great. Optimistic. And I've got that as the vocalist. And the vocalist is amazing because they're the ones that are out there pushing the fans and getting people going. They're the lead of the group. The violin, and I have their archetype, the violin, and their side B is certainty, right? Courage is the conga drums.
Okay.
And their side A is change and crisis management. Gracious is self-awareness. And that is the saxophone. And I believe that is you, my friend.
Yes. And,
yes.
And this was, let's say, for me the most surprising or not surprising part, because I shared with you that I'm playing saxophone. And so I did your survey, and it was said that you take 20 minutes. I don't know if I got 20 minutes. I thought maybe more. So I thought, I just do it in a few minutes. But I really had to sit before the survey, because there's a lot of sorting in it, a lot of quality, where you really have to say, oh, is this more important than the other one? That's the idea of the survey.
Right.
So I really thought, oh my God. And then you get questions again. So I really thought I did it rather thoroughly. And surprise, surprise. So give me your feedback. How would you do this normally? Normally a leader would do that survey and would ask you for some kind of advice or some kind of next steps. And this would be some kind of first talk, where you give the feedback and say, hello, Mr., in this case, saxophone.
Yeah, Mr. Saxophone. And, you know, here's the beautiful thing is whether you play the saxophone or not, and you do, and you play the saxophone very well, if I were to tell you, and I explained your desirable traits are open, reflective, warmth and empathy, and diplomatic. And I would say, do you agree with those?
Yeah, I would say they're good in my street. So normally I would give an answer, and there is so much more, and I would rather see myself not only as a saxophone player, but also as let's say, a multi-instrumentalist or what else. But the answer would be yes.
Yeah, and then we would talk a little bit about your greatest strength. How do you see yourself as open and reflective, and where else could that be? And it shows up in the drums, as we talked about. And your drummer score was quite high too, your curiosity.
Okay.
I believe you, out of the 10, you were all competent in 8 of them.
Oh, wow.
Which is amazing. And so the two that, that need a little bit of work is just something that we would work on as we moved forward.
Absolutely.
And I would give you skills to work on, different things to read. And we would journal on some of the things that you would look to do to increase those traits. Because when you increase those traits, you flip it back to serve your people that way. And the idea here is, what do who are you serving? And leadership is to be a leader. You've got to take care of your people. And I think, and I read this in your book, and I believe it was your book or in your website that I absolutely love. Leaders, and help me if I've got this wrong, good leaders can be followed, and they can follow.
Yeah, that's the basic idea that we, or I say I, that we have to understand that a leader can be a follower, and or will be a follower at some time, and that every follower can be a leader. So in what I mean with this is not actually, I don't really like to talk about leader or a follower or leadership and followership. I would rather like to talk about leading and following. And that's the dynamic that you would have in every band. Because if you're only leading, like let's talk about jazz and Miles Davis, if your quintet is named after yourself, this doesn't mean that you play all the time your trumpet. So,
Right.
So that's, you have sometimes to follow the other ideas.
Yeah, and I love that, because that's exactly what I'm trying to coach people here on. Is leadership is not a title. It is something within you. And when it's within you, and once you recognize what that is and you put context and language behind it, then you can successfully grow in that leadership language, right? And so then what we're doing is helping them to become that full band, to ultimately leave a legacy of being curious or courageous or kindness or gracious like you, rather than, I really didn't like that person, they were too blah, 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 and all the negative traits. Or working so hard like I did to get the results. And I thought that those results would be what I would be remembered for a while. And that's when everything flipped for me, is to understand that leadership is not a title. It's what you do and what you say for your name, and let your name speak for you. And that's why when you look at these great musicians like Miles Davis and, even Queen, Freddie Mercury, and all of the great jazz, Ella Fitzgerald, their name and not necessarily their songs off the top of your head.
Right. I like what you say. This is actually where I make the analogy between the business world and the music world. So the music world is so big and has so many interesting characters, roles, you name it. And at the very end, the question is, are the singles, the songs, the stuff that you're producing, is this your legacy, or is the legacy how you did this and how you interacted with people? So I like this very much, also from your approach, that it's a very positive approach. And I like this A side, B side. You could also say it's like left brain, right brain, or the iceberg and what's beneath it. So it's some kind of holistic thinking. And sometimes I feel that people that call themselves leader, let's put it that way, sometimes forget the other side, and it helps them to, or yeah, they would need help, and it's fantastic if they would reach out, and that's would also be the idea. Does people come to your website by typing into like leadership development, or how is your business? Is it a via business?
It is. They can go into my website, LinkedIn, but yeah, the business comes organically. It comes by referrals. The business is really the people who genuinely believe their companies want to be led by people, and not, it's, why not ditch the data for 3 to 4 minutes and pick up a song in your head just to change your mindset for a moment during the day and go out and connect with your people? Because what I like to talk about is, I'm not saying go out and be all ooey gooey with your people. It's a both and approach. You have to have accountability with kindness. You have to have discipline with respect. You have to have both and, right? And that is what a true leader does. And a true, like you said, whether it's by title or not by title, a leader can be anyone in the organization.
And you work with them, let's say, in coaching sessions, but you also come up with, you help them to discover new music or music that would fit to them. How does this work?
Well, interestingly enough, what I do in one-on-one and in my workshops is I will go in and I'll say, I want you to come up with 3 songs for me right off the top. One that you listened to as a kid that you just absolutely love. One that you listened to in high school that really brings back some nostalgia. And one that is really important to you right now. And what I have found in that research, or that exercise that I do, is when we are kids, we're really looking at motivational songs. Oh. When we're in our teenage years, those songs become almost hardcore, grunge, negative, that kind of, I want to, no school, Alice Cooper.
Pretty Vacant, the Sex Pistols.
Right.
Talking about myself.
Yeah. Yeah. The Ramones, the Cars, it was a lot of disparity and a lot of angst in the teenage years. And then when I hear what they're doing now, that tells me if they're working from a positive mindset or a negative mindset.
Okay, so
right?
the music taste, or the selection of that kind of music, that tells more than just the music itself.
Right, and it just kind of gives you, an idea of what they're doing, and then we create a playlist. Now, I can't create a playlist for each individual person because it really needs to come from you. It needs to come from your songs, your beliefs. Do you have a song that motivates you right now that will change your mood instantly? And what is that? And then we start there. Do you have a song that calms you when you're frustrated, when you're ready to give up? What is that song? And we label these songs and put it into a playlist so that when they're in that moment and they can recognize it now because they have context to it, they can listen to that song for 3-4 minutes and let the emotion change.
Nice. Very nice. So I'm just thinking about people that listen now to the podcast, and they might do this in the car or at home or with a headphone. Yeah. They can get right into it without being distracted too much to think about these 3 songs that you ask. So the kids songs and the what was it, the high school, and the song
The
that
high
is
school.
at the
And then
moment prevalent.
where they are right now. Absolutely. And for me, and I think you and I talked about this before, being dyslexic, music helped me so much. And, when we can take, it's not only emotional and motivational, but it's meaningful, and music can change your perspective at a moment's notice just by listening to something that is meaningful to you. And I think that is what is so important about leading people or being a leader amongst your teams or people you're with, if it's a soccer group or a mom's group, understanding that positive energy is really where humanity lies. And that's where music ties into business, and for me is helping others understand that we all get frustrated, we all get angry, we're all sick of data, we're all tied up in our office, but we've got to let go before it hurts our health. And
Beautiful.
yeah.
Sounds very good. There's one thing I would like to mention, because you mentioned the word data more often. I think there are two kinds of data. One is quantitative, and the other one is qualitative. And I think music on the part that you also think on is the qualitative part. And after all the quality, so if you look into Spotify, sometimes I see a certain song that I like very personally, and I say, oh, wow, it's 290 million times streamed on Spotify. So there is data, quantitative data in qualitative. And as a matter of fact, you can also flip that side. So go from quantitative to qualitative, and maybe back again if you have to roll it out a little bit broader. And sometimes you need the data to convince people.
I love that. I love that idea. What I have seen in business, which is interesting, is we have so much data, as you know, that sometimes there was an old saying, data doesn't lie. And in Spotify and what you're saying there, it doesn't. But when you have so much data to rely on, you can also twist it to tell the story you want it to tell.
Yeah, okay.
That's the data that I'm speaking of.
All right.
Right.
So that's the data crunching and trying to convince people just with the numbers.
Right.
I like very much you mentioned the dyslexia.
Yeah.
And I thought about when you talk about songs, most of them are sung. So when we look into pop or rock music, most of them are sung. So and there is that verbal part where you if you would read the lyrics, you would reread them in a different way. And I thought, because I'm not English native speaker, sometimes in my youth we were listening to songs that we had no clue what the words were about. So it was some kind of let's say language dyslexia, but we felt the power of that song. And later you dive into it and you say, oh, that's an extra layer that I missed.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting that you say that, because I have been looking at lyrics of when I was younger and singing them, and I'm going, huh, wow, I didn't know that's what that song was about.
Right.
But it had a good tempo and had a great beat.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting part. So because sometimes if you would take again these three songs where we just talked about, what about the lyrics? Or what if they don't have lyrics? That's already an interesting thing. Oh, all your songs don't have lyrics. That's or maybe the version that you're listening to. I think that's interesting to just move forward.
I like that concept. I may have to try that one. With dyslexia, for me it was the memorization. It's like still with the ABCs. I don't know how many people listening to the podcast now, but who still sings the ABCs to remember what comes after a certain letter? I do. I still sing the ABCs in my head to remember what comes after a letter, like a letter J. I'm like, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. But that's, and we listen to all those nursery rhymes, right? Mm-hmm. Mary Had a Little Lamb. Ring Around the Rosie is another one that
I don't know that.
The Ring Around the Rosie?
How does it go?
Well, this is an interesting story. It's ring around the rosy, pocket full of posy, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. And it was actually created, and I'll have to look up exactly, but I believe it was created when the plague came. And people were singing this so that kids wouldn't get upset. So again, this goes to your point. We were singing this and didn't know what the real meaning was. And it was a nursery rhyme. That's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah. So there's much more behind the songs we love than we thought before. And it helps us to uncover this and bring it a step further.
Yeah. And, it helped me with dyslexia with even with spelling, like arithmetic. Yeah. I never really could figure out how to spell arithmetic. So I created a rat in the house may eat the ice cream. And every single letter is arithmetic.
Ah, nice. So there's much more that we could use in workshops and bring in music and words and work with them.
Yeah.
Right. So Paula, thank you very much for all your insights and also your B-side. I think you didn't mention that you also have written a book about the B-side, and there's a website out there. Is there anything you want to cover before we close?
You know what? I just appreciate you, Christoph, and your enlightening. The book is side B, the first language of it. But I appreciate you and all your listeners. The work that you're doing is amazing, and I can't wait to get your book out here in the States.
Thank you very much, Paula. Thank you for having the show. It was so great, and it was so funny to look at you with your backdrop of a car without moving. So I really loved it. Thank you very much.
And I do have the book there in case anyone wanted to see it. All right, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate this because listening is one of the top leadership skills, and I feel honored about this. It is my mission to find, create, and share inspirations for meaningful collaboration based on music analogies. If you want to support this, please subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, or write a review on iTunes or Spotify. And more inspirations can be found on musicthinking.com. We have a blog, and you can download the Music Thinking Framework. And finally, I would love to hear your feedback. And if you need help with a business challenge, please reach out to me via email podcast@musicthinking.com.